The fairy tale marriage of King Charles and Princess Diana captivated the world, but behind the glittering royal facade lay a darker reality. Secrets, betrayals, and emotional turmoil were the hidden threads unraveling their bond. From secret affairs to struggles neither dared to share, their relationship was far from the dream it appeared to be. In this video, we'll uncover the shocking truths Charles kept hidden, truths that ultimately led to the downfall of their iconic union. But wait, what was the Camilla Connection? Before Princess Diana entered the picture, King Charles had a passionate and complicated relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles. Their connection began in the early 1970s and was rooted in a deep emotional bond. However, when royal obligations and societal expectations prevented their union, Charles moved on, at least publicly. But even after marrying Diana, Charles's relationship with Camilla didn't fade away. Behind the scenes, they maintained close contact, exchanging letters and meeting discreetly. Diana wasn't oblivious. She quickly sensed that Camilla was more than just a friend to Charles. The infamous moment when Diana confronted Camilla, saying there were 3 of us in this marriage, highlighted her awareness and heartbreak. Charles, however, refused to be transparent, leaving Diana in a state of constant doubt and emotional turmoil. He chose to protect his connection with Camilla rather than address his wife's feelings. This unresolved triangle had devastating effects on their marriage. Diana felt isolated and betrayed, while Charles continued to rely on Camilla for emotional support. The secrecy only intensified, creating a wedge that would ultimately become impossible to bridge. For Diana, the idea of competing with a past and ongoing love was unbearable. Meanwhile, Charles's inability to sever ties with Camilla revealed his divided heart. The public facade of a happy royal couple crumbled behind closed doors, with Diana increasingly vocal about her struggles. By the time their marriage ended, the truth about Charles and Camilla's enduring bond was undeniable. It wasn't just a shadow over their marriage, it was a fundamental fracture. The secrecy and betrayal set the stage for one of the most dramatic royal scandals of the 20th century. Did you hear about the affair allegations with Tiggy Bjork? As if Charles's ongoing connection with Camilla wasn't enough, rumors of another alleged affair began to circulate during his marriage to Diana. This time, the whispers surrounded Tiggy, a nanny hired to care for Prince William and Prince Harry. Tiggy quickly became a trusted figure within the royal household, but her growing closeness with Charles did not go unnoticed. Diana reportedly found Charles's interactions with Tiggy suspicious. She felt that their relationship was far too familiar for comfort, especially given her own sense of isolation within the marriage. Tiggy was not only caring for the boys, but seemed to be occupying an emotional space that Diana longed for Charles to fill. For Diana, this perceived bond between Charles and Tiggy was yet another blow to an already fragile relationship. The rumors were further fueled by Charles's apparent fondness for Tiggy. He openly praised her in public and defended her in private. This attention only deepened Diana's insecurities and led to speculation among royal observers. While there has never been concrete evidence of an affair, the secrecy and lack of transparency around their interactions left Diana feeling betrayed and undermined. For Diana, Tiggy represented more than just a potential rival. She symbolized the emotional distance that had grown between her and Charles. Rather than addressing Diana's concerns, Charles remained evasive, allowing doubt and mistrust to fester. These unresolved suspicions added to the strain on their marriage and contributed to Diana's growing sense of loneliness. Though the allegations regarding Tiggy may never be fully proven, the damage was already done. Diana's perception of betrayal, coupled with Charles's refusal to address her concerns, solidified a pattern of secrecy and emotional disconnection that defined their tumultuous marriage. And what about those financial secrets? Another significant source of tension in Charles and Diana's marriage was his secrecy around finances. As the heir to the throne, Charles had access to vast wealth, including the Duchy of Cornwall, a sprawling estate that provided him with a substantial income. Yet Diana often found herself excluded from key decisions about how the family's money was managed. This lack of transparency left her feeling powerless and out of place in her own marriage. Diana was passionate about her charitable work, and as she became more involved in these causes, she began to see how money could make a real difference in people's lives. However, Charles's approach to the royal finances often clashed with her vision. He prioritized maintaining traditional royal responsibilities and was less inclined to use their wealth in ways that aligned with Diana's more modern and humanitarian perspective. What made this worse was Charles's reluctance to share details about the family's financial affairs. Diana reportedly had little say in financial decisions, and this exclusion created resentment. She felt like an outsider in the royal household, with no voice in matters that directly impacted her and their children. For a woman as determined and independent as Diana, this dynamic was both frustrating and disheartening. This financial secrecy not only caused emotional rifts, but also amplified Diana's sense of isolation. She longed for a partnership where decisions were made together, but instead Charles's authoritative handling of money deepened the divide between them. As Diana continued to push for more involvement and transparency, Charles remained firmly rooted in tradition, unwilling to bend or adapt. In the end, this financial disconnect became another point of contention in their already strained marriage. It highlighted their differing priorities and widened the emotional gap that would eventually make reconciliation impossible. Personal struggles kept in the dark. Behind the polished public image, Charles battled personal struggles that he kept hidden from Diana. As the heir to the throne, he faced immense pressure to embody the ideals of royalty while preparing for the eventual role of king. This weight often left him feeling isolated and overwhelmed. Instead of opening up to Diana, he chose to internalize his struggles, creating a significant emotional divide between them. Charles's reluctance to share his feelings wasn't just about maintaining a stoic royal image, it was also about his upbringing. Raised under the strict protocols of the monarchy, Charles learned early on to suppress his emotions. This upbringing made it difficult for him to express vulnerability, even with his wife. Diana, who was also battling her own mental health issues, including bulimia and depression, often felt abandoned by Charles when she needed him most. Diana, in turn, struggled to understand why her husband remained so distant. She longed for emotional intimacy and support, but Charles's inability or unwillingness to communicate left her feeling rejected. At times, it seemed as though he prioritized his duties and public persona over their marriage. This emotional withdrawal only deepened Diana's sense of loneliness. What made matters worse was that both Charles and Diana were dealing with their struggles in isolation. While Diana sought to connect, Charles retreated further into himself, leaving no room for understanding or empathy. Their inability to bridge this gap meant that their challenges, instead of bringing them closer, became insurmountable obstacles. Ultimately, the lack of communication and mutual support created a marriage defined by emotional distance. Charles's hidden struggles and Diana's unanswered cries for connection were emblematic of a relationship where neither felt truly seen or understood. A reality that proved impossible to sustain. Have you heard about the dismissiveness toward Diana's charity work? Princess Diana was deeply passionate about her charity work, dedicating herself to causes that resonated on a global scale. From raising awareness about AIDS to advocating for landmine victims, she became known as the People's Princess for her compassion and determination. However, Charles reportedly did not share her enthusiasm for these endeavors. Instead, he often appeared dismissive or indifferent to her efforts, leaving Diana feeling unsupported in a role that was deeply meaningful to her. Diana's charitable initiatives not only gained her widespread admiration, but also set her apart from the traditional royal mold. Her ability to connect with ordinary people was a stark contrast to the more reserved demeanor of the monarchy, including Charles. Rather than celebrating her success, Charles reportedly saw her growing popularity as a threat. This insecurity added tension to their relationship, with Diana often feeling as though her husband resented her accomplishments rather than supporting them. The lack of understanding and recognition from Charles hurt Diana deeply. She had hoped her husband would take pride in her work and stand beside her as a partner in making a difference. Instead, she often felt isolated in her mission, left to pursue her charitable causes without his encouragement or involvement. This disconnect not only highlighted their differing priorities, but also revealed the widening emotional chasm in their marriage. Over time, the dismissiveness became more than just a point of contention. It symbolized the fundamental differences in their values and outlooks. Diana's work brought her closer to the public, while Charles's indifference only served to push them further apart. This lack of shared vision and mutual respect contributed to the unraveling of their already fragile relationship. When it came to parenting, Diana and Charles had starkly different approaches, leading to frequent disagreements. Diana was a hands-on mother who sought to give her sons, William and Harry, as normal a childhood as possible. She took them to fast food restaurants, amusement parks, and even made sure they experienced life outside the royal bubble. For her, protecting them from the pressures of royal life was a priority. Charles, on the other hand, adhered to more traditional parenting norms. His involvement was often limited to formal appearances and fulfilling royal expectations. While he undoubtedly cared for his children, his approach was shaped by his own upbringing, where emotional expression was minimal. This difference, Diana's desire to shield her children from the rigidity of royal life, sometimes clashed with Charles's insistence on upholding tradition. Their differing perspectives often led to heated arguments about how the boys should be raised. Diana's efforts to nurture a more grounded upbringing for William and Harry were seen as unconventional by Charles, who preferred a more detached and structured approach. These disputes weren't just about parenting. They were a reflection of the broader issues in their marriage. Diana's empathetic modern perspective clashed with Charles's traditionalism, creating yet another divide between them. The lack of alignment on such an important aspect of their lives only deepened the cracks in their relationship. Ultimately, the tension over parenting became a microcosm of their struggles as a couple. Diana's hands-on approach and Charles's reserved demeanor highlighted their differences, not just as parents, but as individuals navigating a deeply challenging union. For Charles, the pressures of royal life and his marriage often felt suffocating. The constant scrutiny, rigid expectations, and public demands weighed heavily on him. Over time, he developed a longing for freedom from the spotlight, his duties, and even the confines of his marriage. Yet, rather than sharing these feelings with Diana, he chose to keep them hidden. This longing manifested in various ways. Charles sought solace in his relationships outside the marriage, including his bond with Camilla. He also found comfort in private hobbies such as painting and gardening, which allowed him moments of escape. However, these retreats from royal life often excluded Diana, deepening her feelings of isolation. Diana, too, felt trapped, but instead of retreating, she turned to the public and her humanitarian work for solace. This stark difference in coping mechanisms created a further disconnect between the couple. While Diana yearned for emotional support and connection, Charles's desire for freedom was inherently wrong, but his unwillingness to communicate his struggles made reconciliation impossible. Diana often felt like she was battling the weight of their marriage alone, unaware of the depth of Charles's dissatisfaction. This silence only fueled misunderstandings and resentment on both sides. In the end, Charles's unspoken longing for freedom symbolized the emotional walls he had built. His inability to share his struggles or find common ground with Diana became a defining feature of their troubled relationship. The gulf between them, rooted in a lack of communication and shared vision, continued to grow. Ultimate, complicated relationship with the royal family. Charles's relationship with his family, particularly with his parents, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, placed significant strain on his marriage. Growing up, Charles often struggled under the weight of royal expectations and his father's stern demeanor. Prince Philip's critical nature left Charles feeling inadequate, while Queen Elizabeth's focus on duty over emotion offered little comfort. Rather than confiding in Diana, Charles chose to keep his frustrations private, leaving her in the dark about the pressures he faced. This lack of transparency widened the emotional gap between them. Diana also faced her own challenges in navigating the royal family's rigid dynamics. She often felt unsupported and excluded, especially as Charles retreated emotionally rather than opening up about his struggles. The royal family's influence loomed large over their marriage. Diana, feeling like an outsider, could not fully grasp the complexities of Charles's relationship with his parents. His inability to include her in these private battles underscored the lack of partnership in their union. Ultimately, the unspoken tensions and external pressures further fractured their already fragile relationship. Were there doubts about marriage from the start? Even before their wedding day, Charles harbored doubts about his marriage to Diana. While she seemed like the perfect match for the monarchy at 2014, young, beautiful, and popular at 2014, Charles questioned whether their personalities were truly compatible. He reportedly felt pressured to marry quickly to meet royal expectations, leaving little room for genuine emotional connection to develop. Diana entered the marriage full of hope, believing in the fairy tale image the public adored. However, Charles's internal reservations soon became evident. His emotional detachment and lack of romantic gestures led Diana to question his commitment. She later learned that Charles had expressed doubts about their union early on, a revelation that left her devastated. For Diana, the idea that her marriage was driven by duty rather than love was a profound betrayal. It made her feel as though she had been misled, entering into a partnership that was one-sided from the start. Charles's failure to address his hesitations openly created a foundation of mistrust and insecurity that only deepened over time. These early doubts set the stage for the conflicts that would later define their tumultuous relationship. But wait, what about secret friendships and alliances? Charles's friendships, particularly those tied to his past, became a source of tension in his marriage. His close bond with Andrew Parker Bowles, 2014 Camilla's husband, was especially troubling to Diana. To her, this connection symbolized Charles's lingering ties to Camilla and his unwillingness to fully let go of his past. Rather than addressing Diana's concerns, Charles maintained secrecy about his friendships. This lack of transparency created mistrust, leaving Diana feeling excluded and unsure of where she stood in his life. She often suspected that these relationships were prioritized over their marriage, fueling her insecurities and deepening the emotional divide. Diana's feelings of isolation were compounded by Charles's refusal to confront these issues openly. His friendships, while possibly innocent, highlighted the broader problems in their marriage, a lack of communication and mutual understanding. By keeping parts of his life hidden, Charles unintentionally reinforced Diana's sense of betrayal. These unresolved tensions made it difficult for their relationship to move forward, solidifying the emotional walls between them. Those are the media's role in their struggles. China. The media played a pivotal role in both elevating and unraveling Charles and Diana's marriage. From the beginning, their relationship was under constant scrutiny, with the press often portraying Diana as the beloved people's princess and Charles as the distant, misunderstood royal. This public narrative created immense pressure for both of them. Diana's ability to charm the media and connect with the public only widened the gap between her and Charles. While Diana thrived in the spotlight, Charles often felt overshadowed and resentful. The constant comparisons fueled tensions within their marriage, as Charles struggled to reconcile his role as future king with the public's adoration for Diana. Instead of uniting against the pressures of the media, the couple grew further apart. Diana found solace in her public role while Charles retreated, feeling increasingly alienated. The tabloids capitalized on their struggles, painting a tragic picture of their relationship that only deepened their personal frustrations. Rather than working together to manage the external scrutiny, their inability to communicate and support each other ultimately exacerbated the cracks in their marriage. Charles's need for control. Charles's need for control became a recurring issue in his marriage to Diana. From finances to public appearances, Charles often made decisions without consulting Diana, reinforcing the imbalance of power in their relationship. His adherence to tradition clashed with Diana's desire for a more modern, collaborative approach. This dynamic was particularly evident in their public roles. While Diana sought to break royal conventions by engaging directly with people, Charles prioritized maintaining the formality of royal protocols. These differing values led to frequent disagreements, with Diana feeling stifled and sidelined. In their private life, Charles's controlling tendencies extended to finances and household decisions. Diana, who valued independence, felt increasingly powerless. This imbalance eroded any sense of partnership, leaving Diana feeling as though her voice didn't matter. Charles's need for control symbolized their inability to find common ground. His reluctance to adapt or involve Diana in key decisions created emotional barriers that were impossible to overcome. Over time, this dynamic solidified the distance between them, contributing to the eventual collapse of their marriage.